to any replayers. If you're a replayer, you can of course tap on the screen for hearts. You can follow me on Twitter or Snapchat, ask me questions there. I love to interact with people, answer your questions. Hey, Christy. And just in general provide any guidance and support and just pure answers to any questions that you have when it comes to personal finance. I feel like people need this. Hi, you back in Chicago from Florida? Oh, look at my messy hair. It's before workout. Had a busy morning. Yeah, yay! Welcome to the cold Chicago, although it's not as cold as before. So I'm on my pre-workout mess. That's all right. Why? Because money doesn't really care. You know, that's the beauty of it. Money doesn't care what you look like. Doesn't care, you know, if you sleep in or if you do. It doesn't care. It's indifferent. Money is indifferent. So if you're new to me, my name is Joannazarach. I am on here every single day. 7 days a week. I almost said 10 days a week. If only there were so many days in a week. 7 days a week at 10 a.m. I come on and I talk to you about money habits. I talk to you about developing better money habits because I find that money is a big struggle for people. And that a lot of people lack the knowledge, the tools, and just like the facts around money. And I want to change that. And I'm trying, I'm working, you know, whatever tools necessary. And I've discovered Periscope and I quite like it. So I've been on here since October. And, you know, I don't know if I'm going to get to Money Matters today. So usually I do a Money Matters at 5 o'clock, but I have a 5:30 meetup where you're talking about using video in business. And I think I'm on the, I'm slotted to talk about Periscope. Why? Because I love it. But what is the topic for today? Paying off student loans. So if you want to pay off student loans, so I think some student loans are, you can choose to pay them off or not. First of all, I would really get an assessment, like make yourself a little Excel table to see what your principal is, what are the different rates, and what are, what are your monthly payoffs, and how you got to make a plan, right? And so for student loans, like it's actually, it depends on your income level. So it's at student income level, your student loan interest is tax deductible. And so if you have the discipline to actually invest, you may want to do that first before you do the payoffs. And by investing, I mean the first layer of investing where you take advantage of some tax deductible plans. So I would actually, if your interest rates, I would say are below 6 or 5%. So again, if you have low, and I know some people have refinanced the student debt to really low rates, like 2 or 3%. If you're at 2 or 3%, for certain, I would first look into funding a traditional retirement account, like a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k before you pay off your loans. Even though like you were like, I just really want to get rid of loans. If you're already doing that, if you already contributed to your traditional 401k or IRA, then I would like make a schedule of how to pay off your student loans because you want to get rid of that debt. But debt is so, hey, how are you? That debt is so such a low interest that it's actually not really bad debt. So if you have the discipline, if you have your credit cards paid off and everything else, the other thing is just like make a plan, right? Like you've got to have to like really lower your expenses to build up the cash and just try to pay it off. Pay it off in chunks. Like if you get a bonus, like a tax refund, if you get chunks of money, you can just put it towards your student debt. But I really would consider first contributing to your maxing out, not just contributing, but maxing out any traditional or any tax deferred retirement accounts first. So I hope that answers your question. Otherwise, it's just like plowing money into it, like really going, okay, I have this, find a higher paying job, right? Or do some side income to really plow money into it if you really want to get rid of it. I did get rid of it probably within the 18 months of getting my first real job after grad school. So I support that because I feel like it's just like a load off it gives you more option not to have that like monthly payment, but given the interest rates are so low, I would really consider other places where you can actually get a tax break, which I'm talking about today. So talking about taxes. So if you're new to me, there are 5 levers that you can, that you really need to understand. And like, I mean it, I don't mean like to a level of expertise, like it's 80-20 rule, like just really understand how the our taxation system works. This is US centric. I know some of it is applicable to other countries, but in the US, we have, taxation is actually your number one expense. Whether you are a W-2 employee or you have a small business or 1099 employee or 1099 freelancer contractor, your taxes have such a huge impact on how much money you get to keep that I really feel like guys need to pay more attention and need to learn it. And the way I advocate for learning, as I say, learn by doing it. So one of the first things is just understand sort of what a marginal tax rate means. So I want to go over marginal tax rates today, where people are. And I think I've put this table out, and I'll tweet out the link to I've been working, by the way, on this Excel spreadsheet in Google Docs to help. One just has tax rates and brackets, but the other one, I'm trying to create this tool where you estimate your tax implication, and also like gives you what your marginal tax rate if you have a hard time looking up tax table. But everyone should know their marginal tax rate, right? Because it should inspire you to take advantage of the tax deferred accounts, whether they're 401k or an IRA or even an FSA. You need to understand how the different decisions that you make, whether it's, again, if you're W-2 employees, you have 2 or 3 vehicles available to you to lower your tax payment. But if you're a small business owner, right? If you're a small business owner, and especially if you're a self-employed solopreneur, you have a lot more levers to shift income into vehicles that protect it from tax or give you tax break, and therefore lower your and it's all within the system. So you need to understand the taxation system, and then so first you figure out your marginal tax rate, right? You can just Google marginal tax rate, habitation tax. I don't know what that is. And so you're just a student, yeah. So the marginal tax rate will be, deciding based on your filing status and what your income is. You figure out what's your marginal tax rate. That's the marginal tax rate is the tax rate for the next dollar that you earn or the last dollar that you earn. So say, you have $50,000, and when you go to $50,000 $1, you're going to get taxed for that $1 at your marginal tax rate. So if it's 25%, you get to get 75 cents, and 25 cents goes to the federal government. There's obviously other parts of taxation, state taxes, as well as payroll taxes. And again, I just really think that people should take a little bit more time to study them. So the way I advocate for it is that you actually do your tax return. Now, you don't have to be an expert in a tax return, and you don't even have to, if you're not comfortable with it, you can still have somebody else prepare it, but I challenge you to try it by yourself. And you can use TurboTax Online. It's a free software to get started. They don't charge you till you kind of get to the place where you're like, I'd like to file. But familiarize yourself with all the steps that go into filing a tax return, because it'll empower you to understand what all the different things that go into it and how they impact it. The little calculator on the side or the top, depending which software you're using, is kind of showing you, okay, when I add this or I subtract this, when I add this to the deductions or I subtract that, when I have a deduction or credit or I add income, this is how it affects my bill. And, and it's something that you'll learn over time. But if you're always intimidated by the tax return and you just kind of think it's someone else's problem, then you're going to have a really hard time planning, being sort of strategic about taxes over the long term. And especially if you want to do something different in life. If you want to go from a W-2 and become a small business owner, or if you're transitioning into freelancing, you really need to understand the implications of taxes into what your projected revenue is and your projected cash flow. Because I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make is when they're like, okay, I have a skill set, and maybe if you lost your job or you just want to transition to a different to having your own business, you don't realize how big of an impact taxation has on it, because it's always something that's kind of been taking care of it for you through the W-2 and the payroll taxes process. So that's my, so last night I was doing taxes. I was teaching a family that I've been counseling since August. And by counseling, every couple months I meet with them. At first I just try to get an understanding of the financial situation, developing a plan, really being okay, you really need to do these things to get them on a right financial path. And one of the things is that, and because I harp on it, right, like income, and they're trying to increase their income. They're working really hard at that, just getting higher paid jobs or freelancing on the side. And the second is taxation. So, it's like, you guys can do your taxes. Like when you start doing your taxes, you start understanding the implication of it, and you start keeping track of things that are important for tax purposes. And also when you make a decision, you go, okay, how does that impact my tax position, whether it's electing 401k? Because the next thing we're going to do is we're trying to try to get one of them to max out, to even contribute to his 401k. He's not doing it, right? So I want him to understand the implication that it has on their tax base and their total tax liability, because people just look at it as something that happens and they just want the tax return files and they don't want to think deeply about it. And when you start doing it, when you start following the steps, and like for a program like TurboTax, you're going to understand what are all the different pieces of it. And so finally, that's where I'm getting to estimates. If you are even if you're a W-2 employee, that's less applicable, but if you're self-employed, it is so important to be doing your estimates every quarter, right? Because your estimated taxes are due actually the first quarter of 2016 is due April 15th. So not only do you may have to send a payment for taxes if you owe it, but you need to send an estimated payment. And so to calculate your estimate is really, really important. And again, you're not going to be able to do that if you haven't really been paying attention to your taxes. Same with the W-2 form. With the W-2 employee, a lot of times they say, how can I increase my cash flow or improve my cash flow situation? Well, if you're going to get a big refund at the end of the year, or if you have been getting a refund and W-2 is your only source of income, then you may want to adjust your W-4 exemptions so that you can get more money in your paycheck to advance your cash flow, especially if you're working on paying off debt, right? Whether it's student loans or especially credit card loans, right? Like I know a lot of people are in, I call it pre-investment stage, where you're cash flow challenged, which means that you're probably spending more than you're earning. And then that's the first thing you need to work on. And if you have accumulated credit card debt, unfortunately, you really need to focus on that first before you even start investing. And then investing into tax deferred accounts is really preferable when you're cash flow challenged. You really only need to worry about other pieces of investing after you've sort of paid off your credit card debt. That's no double-digit loan interest. Guys, do not be paying double-digit. Don't be paying a double-digit interest on your debt. Make sure you get away with it. Hi, I'm like, who is that? Let's see. I will. Jojo. Hi. I'm like, I can't, you can't believe it. I'm like, who? Tell me your name, because I'm looking at your profile and I'm like, who is this? Gal Mizzle. And so pay off. Hi, Beth. How are you? And so, I am, so I'm talking about taxes. So estimating your taxes, get your tax estimates under, in line, figure out your W-4 exemptions. And, if you're not sure where to start, do ask the question, right? I'm more than happy to go and say, okay, what are your numbers, right? And I'm creating this calculator because I've talked about it before, and I got started on it. I was like, oh, it's so complicated, right? And I'm like, again, because I sat down with the family yesterday and I was teaching them tax education, I was teaching them how to do the tax forms, I got inspired again because I'm looking at I'm like, okay, you must understand, I'm not a tax preparer. Like, I can be, but I don't want to be. I'm an educator. So I was sitting down with them and I was like literally watching them go through the TurboTax and go, okay, and basically explaining to them at each step, like, what's important, what can you answer, right? Because it has a lot of options, and I'm like, doesn't apply to you. Here's where you put in your number here. Here, you look at this form, right? Like, I literally have them do their W-2 forms, and I say, you put these numbers in from this form into these boxes on the computer, right? Because I'm trying to teach them. And I'm trying to empower people, right? And I say, you can still go have an accountant do it if you don't feel confident. But now you feel like, wait a minute, this is a skill that I can have. And I want people to feel empowered to do that for themselves, because all of a sudden they're seeing the numbers, right? They're seeing the amount they owe on top of it. And then they see the number of, the number go down if they add deductions, like we did their interest mortgage to their mortgage interest to Schedule A, right? And they saw that number go down, and I was like, here's the implication, right? And here's how you start thinking about it. And they still have 3 or 4 more pieces to put in, and we talked about it was okay. Here's your expenses. We have different substances of financial establishments. I'm not sure what you mean. Maybe like do you mean from like a different country or just I'm not sure. So that's the idea, is to really get you to first of all understand the implication of taxes and impact of taxes. Yeah, in America. To understand your marginal tax, because it's going to inform some things about why it's so important for you to take advantage of your tax deferred accounts when you are first starting to invest and save, because you're just really trying to increase your cash flow, and then get your tax returns, really practice, right? Like it took us probably an hour and a half yesterday, and we didn't quite complete it because they have some freelancing income that allows them to take some business expenses, which is a little more complex. But if you just have a W-2, and I think now even TurboTax does a thing where you can take a picture with your phone of your W-2 and even do that, right? And so it's like understanding the implications of all the decisions that you're making on the tax return and your tax liability, because again, taxes are your biggest expenditure, and you're not paying attention to them because you've been told that you don't need to, right? Or that it's too complicated. The tax code is so complicated. It's only complicated because most of the tax law is not applicable to regular people. Most of the tax law gets created to allow for a loophole for someone. Like, it's true. Like, most of the tax code legislature is like, someone's like, you know what? I have this business, like, could we get some tax breaks for my kind of business, right? It's not for regular people. It's like really when a lot of money's at stake and a few percentages here and a few percentages there matter. And all of a sudden the tax code seems so complicated. But it's not. It's not once you start exploring it. It's like everything else. If you start exploring it, it'll become less complicated. So I'm like, the number one expenditure that you have in your life, please learn a little bit more about it. It's just kind of like when you first start buying, when you first go buy a house, you're probably undereducated. I know I was when I bought my first house. You just kind of follow a little bit blindly and you learn things along the way, right? So I want you to learn tax and tax code before your financial life gets more complicated, because it will. Eventually it will, because if you're listening to me, hopefully you have some desire to become financially independent and financially free so that you can pursue what you want. Yeah, and you can pursue what you want in life. So that's why I'm encouraging people to take that. But taxes is your number one expense. And then estimating, again, when you're a small business owner, because again, the biggest impact you'll have on actually creating income for yourself is to create it, right? And so that becomes either a solopreneur, which you are a business, just a little bit different than creating a business that has employees. Those paths like they're must have in my mind to creating real wealth, because I feel like you have more at your disposal to actually control your tax rates by how you manage your revenues and expenditures and how you structure everything, and even if you have rental income, right, that's a business, right? All of these things, I always encourage people, like, what happens is when you start looking, yeah, you do. You have to get them organized, and it encourages you that it's a virtuous cycle. Once you do your taxes and you go, crap, I didn't keep track of all that, or I'm like having a really hard time finding that stuff when it's time for tax time. And what you'll do is you'll do it on a more ongoing basis. So I'm also trying to encourage you to do that as well. So but when you first start out in business, like, taxes really trip people up because they don't realize how much of their expenditure is going to be taxes. So that's why estimating your tax liability is really, really important. And again, it should more than inspire you to look into the tax code and say, okay, how can I put money away for myself? How can I build my net worth through the tax vehicles that are available to me? Which is, again, if you're a solopreneur, the best way to go is individual 401k. And if you have a small business with employees, you do really need to look into and say, what can you offer your employees? So that's the story for today. The assignment, the tasks are figure out your marginal tax rate, work on your tax return. And if you already had somebody else prepare it, just read it. Yeah, just read it and look into it. Oh, and the thing is, when you look at the 1040, like maybe you do not the 1040 easy, but if you do the full 1040, look at all the boxes that are blank in your income in the top portion where it says income, all the different types of income, and think about to yourself, what kind of income would I want to have besides just a W-2, or like the royalties, the rentals, the business, all of these things. That's the way for you to try to diversify, is to figure out what are the different ways I can create income flow in those categories. And it may not be overnight, it may not be next year, it might be in a decade. But that's like one of the goals that you should have, is to diversify your income. And you do that by looking at what boxes are open. And then, of course, if you're a small business owner or a solopreneur, and especially if you're starting out or if you just added some side income, make sure you're doing your estimates. Because, again, it's end of February now, but April 15th is going to be the first one. So we're probably going to be touching on taxes a lot. And then tomorrow, because I did revive my commitment to create this tool. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to go through the tax estimator tool that I'm trying to create, and I'll tweet out the Google Doc link so that you can hopefully try it. And again, I'm still experimenting with how to share my spreadsheets with people so that they can work it. And I'm always looking for feedback, like, did it work for you? Were you able to, alter it? And so, if it's not working with just sharing the tweetable link, I can also share it directly to someone's email. So if you ever see something where you're like, I looked at it, but I couldn't, make it work for myself, I can always share the spreadsheet for you. Because I do want more people to start using the tools that I create in spreadsheets. Okay, great. No, thank you. Oh, thank you for that feedback that you're able to use it. So, whether you can download it, save it, maybe save as, I don't know. Like there must be some different ways. And again, I'm testing it because I haven't seen anybody else do it. I haven't seen people do spreadsheet sharing. Per se, most people do PDFs, or maybe they'll share a Google Doc, so it's a more written word, and versus like spreadsheets, it's like, that's my language, and that's what I recognize that's one of my gifts that I'm trying to share. So thank you everyone for joining. Again, I'm not sure I can do Money Matters today because I'm going to a videos for business meetup at 5:30. So I'll probably most likely see you guys at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Like I said, I might pop on. It depends, if I get there in advance, and if I have a topic to talk about, but otherwise Money Matters will be on Friday. So tomorrow at 10 a.m. we're going to go through, what I'm working on in terms of my tax estimator tool, to help people make better decisions when it comes to tax deferred or any tax implications, because don't feel like even I went to TurboTax and they have an estimator thing, but they're gathering so many information, which is important to be accurate, but I'm trying to do a trade-off between accuracy and ease of use. So thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's good to see you on here. Hi, Beth, if you're still on here. And thanks for joining for the Lizette and Christy as well. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.